Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Jo. J.R. Oates is my artist name and I'm an abstract artist. Welcome to my studio. I'm relatively new to the studio, having just moved to the area in Peak District in the last couple of months. Thank you for joining this video. If you have joined, you're obviously interested in the process of Landscape Artist of the Year, the Sky Arts programme. I'm recording this currently while the 2024 series is on, as I took part last year as a wildcard, and I wanted to just share my experience with other artists or anyone who just might be interested in the process, because it is quite an interesting process and I learned a lot myself along the way. The other reason I'm doing this video is when I was thinking of applying, and I'll talk to you about that process and why I applied in a bit, but I couldn't find that much information out there. There was a few videos and blogs, but I thought when I do this I really want to share my experience with everyone who wants to apply, so thinking of applying, and sort of encourage more people to apply because it was a really great experience. So my journey to going on the programme last year started at I think February, and the applications for Landscape Artist of the Year were open and had been for a few months, and a fellow artist that I'd only just recently met said they were card the previous year, and I was like, that's really interesting, are you a landscape artist? And she was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, okay. I kind of thought it was a programme for landscape artists. I mean, I do the occasional abstract landscape, but I'm not really a landscape artist. I consider myself more of an abstract artist. And she said, well, it doesn't really matter, because when you apply for the main show, you then got that gives you the opportunity to apply to be a wild card. And it doesn't actually really matter whether you're a landscape artist or not. They really want a wide range of artists. But that's what I was told anyway. So what did I apply with? So you have to apply with 2 images. One has to be a landscape, one doesn't have to be a landscape. I applied with one of my abstract landscapes, which I call my meditation series. I applied with this one, which is called Mantle Meditation, which is actually still available if you particularly like it. If you want to go onto my website, jroatesart.com. It's Mantle's a beautiful mountain very close to where we are now in the Peak District, and it's got a sort of sense of all the sort of shapes and energy of the walk you can do right up to the top. And once when we walked up there, we're sort of shrouded in mist and you feel very enveloped, and it means Mother Mountain, so it's very much a sort of sense of like the mountain is enclosing around you, particularly if you're stuck up there in the mist. So I applied for the main show, got rejected, which half of the as an artist you get rejected from a lot of things over time, but you do get the email saying that we'd really love you to apply to be a wild card. And what that means is you are given a date when you can apply. I think it was on a Saturday, and we had you could apply, it was midday, it was going to go live. You could apply for 6 different dates and locations around the country. So at that stage you're already told in advance what the locations are going to be. So last year it was 2 days at Hever Castle in Kent, 2 days in Aberdeenshire, one was in Stonehaven and the other one was Donatar Castle, I think, and 2 days in Liverpool, which were at different places on the Liverpool waterfront and the docks. So I ummed and ahed about where I was going to go. I love Liverpool, spent a lot of time in Liverpool. My partner's from Liverpool, so we spent a lot of time up there, so I know it well. But we were living down in the southeast at the time, just outside of London, so Hever Castle in Kent seemed like a bit more of a practical option for me. The other thing I did find out in my research is that you had to be there really early in the morning, so I knew that to be able to do that and get there would mean, if we were going to Liverpool, a huge journey at the crack of dawn, or we'd have to stay there the night before, and it's a long way to go. Anyway, decided that Hever was the best place to go. Also somewhere I'm really interested in, and I'll come on to why in a minute. And they give you the dates, and when you go on the day that you're given to apply, it's at midday, and you go on and you have to do it really quickly, all your details filled in, and then get your application in. So it's a bit like, trying to get tickets for a show. It's a little bit stressful, but it was in and that was fine. And this is really what they want, because you have to only select one, your preference. They do say that if you can't get your preference, they might offer you another date. But that's what happens. Then I got an email, and I'm just hopefully coming up now, saying that I've been selected as a wildcard, which is really exciting for me. I can't tell you how happy I was on that day because it felt very, very special. They only pick up to 50 for each location and each day. So in the total of 6 heats in the programme, that means that there are, see my maths, 300 wildcards. Decent number, but several thousands of people that apply for the main show, and I think quite a lot of those people then apply to be the wildcards. But yeah, for whatever reason, I got through. So I was really, really happy. I'm really excited. And you get an email directly from the team at Story Vault, who are the production company who do the show. I have to say, all the comms with them throughout were absolutely great. They were really friendly. When I actually even entered, I forgot, for some reason, my Instagram didn't go into the field where I was entering it. And so I emailed them quickly and said, could you just add it in? And they were totally cool with it. And I was really, really grateful, because when you apply for something and you've made a mistake, it's always really hard. But anyway, they were really neat throughout, but more about that as we go along. So also Hever Castle. Why did I pick Hever Castle? So love Liverpool, been there a lot, whatever. But I have done a few paintings of Liverpool in my sort of Wish You Were Here series, my little postcards. And I guess I just wanted to go somewhere new. Also, Hever Castle is the childhood home of Anne Boleyn, which was Henry VIII's second wife, and probably of all his wives, she's the most intriguing to me. And it's the family home of the Boleyns, so her father lived there and all her family before she became Henry VIII's wife. So there's a lot of history there. Also, William Waldorf Astor, who was at one point the richest man in the world, maybe just America, but the world in the early part of the 20th century. He also lived later on, when it sort of many years have been fallen into disrepair. He bought it and transformed it and added lots of things, like he bought antiquities over from Greece and Rome or whatever, and there's loads of statues around the place. I mean, I really went into the research about the venue because it's so beautiful. I'm showing some photos right now, and it's just an amazing building in itself, the castle. And then there's wings that have been added in the 20th century. There's a beautiful long lake with these sort of antiquities around it. You feel like you're sort of in Italy at one point. There's a beautiful maze. And the gardens are vast. I mean, you could spend a couple of days actually looking around it. So I really felt like that was going to be a rich source for inspiration for whatever we were going to paint. Because the thing is, with Landscape Artists of the Year, you have no idea where in the venue or the location you're going to paint when you get there, particularly because there are 2 days that they film, and they're not going to do the same thing on both days because those are 2 separate episodes of the show. So it could have been the lake, could have been the castle, could have been the maze, could have been blah, blah, blah. So no idea, but definitely thought that's going to be somewhere I want to be, particularly because it's in the middle of June, and I thought the sort of colours of the sky and there's lots of greenery and the beautiful sort of opulence of the castle would really fit my style. As I was researching the venue and looking at what was around there, because obviously you've got to think about how you're going to get there, what time you're going to get there. We started to get more details in about the timings, and I knew that you had to be on set quite early, but basically you had to be at the meeting point. Now, where we lived in Northwood prior to moving up north was probably a good hour and a half to hour and 45-minute drive from Hever Castle. So in Eden Bridge, it's quite down into Kent. And I am someone who doesn't like stressful car journeys. I'm a bit of a nervous passenger anyway. And so the thought of like getting up really early with very little sleep, probably because being nervous, driving all that way, stress, then having to unload all your kit and everything. I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to try and see if we can find somewhere to stay the night before, because I just want to get there, I want to really enjoy it, and I don't want to be also not having any sleep. So as it turns out, the castle has a B&B on site, which is rather nice, and I think is a sort of little treat for that week, because it happened to be our wedding anniversary that week. So as a little treat for that, I thought we'd stay over, because the rooms there are absolutely beautiful. They're really opulent. It's sort of very much what you'd expect from a Tudor castle. Really sort of beautiful blues and deep colours. I'm showing you photos now. And so we decided to stay there, and I managed to get a room. And when I went on, because obviously they announced the dates, and the production company have obviously already booked up accommodation for not only the judges who were presenters, but also the crew. And so there was only a few rooms left, so I managed to get a room, which I was really pleased. So that was really cool. So we knew we were going to be going down the day before. I'll have some details to the accommodation at Hever Castle in the show notes, because even if you're not going for a Wildcard Landscape Artist of the Year, it's a really beautiful place to go and visit. The accommodation's really nice. So preparation. I researched previous wildcards and found out, and this was super helpful advice I got, is that where they tell you to meet and park up is not necessarily very close to the place where you're going to paint. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, I think it's a logistical issue, because if you're going to be painting in a kind of crowded place, they don't want like turning up in like the tourist or the visitors car park and unload materials or whatever. Plus also, as if you've seen the show, you'll see that they do this like big walking shot with all the wild cards walking to where they're going to be, and therefore to be able to do that walking shot, they do need to have you some distance away from where you're going to get to. At least that's, I think, their reasoning. Talking about preparation, so I found out that you have to walk a long distance to the where you're going to paint. So I'm thinking about what I'm going to take, and I paint with acrylics, so I thought, well, I'm going to want to take a box of acrylics, so that's one thing. Then I'm probably going to want a stool, and then I'm thinking about the weather and whatever, and it just starts to sort of like list out all the things that I was thinking I've got to take, because I've got to prepare for a warm day, a wet day, all this sort of things, because you've got no way of knowing what the British weather's going to do, even though it was filmed in June. So sort of listing it out and realising I'm not going to be able to carry this on my own, just with my own, like a backpack or something. And I've got a sack trolley, but I was thinking that's probably not great if you're going downhill. Well, I watched a couple of old Landscape Artist of the Year episodes back, and I saw that a lot of people, or a handful of people at least, had what was beach, some people call beach trolleys or camping trolleys, and I've got mine here. Yeah, so this is the camping trolley I got, and another piece of advice I was given was that if you are going to get a camping trolley, the wider wheels are better over more surfaces, including sand and gravel. So this is the one I went for. Did loads and loads of research on this, and that was the one I got in the end. I think, I thought I'm going to use that again for art fairs and things like that, so it was a good investment, because once I sort of worked out what I was going to take, I thought I'm going to need it. And I think in the end I probably did take too many things, so I think it would have been probably, I could have reduced it down to a smaller size or whatever. But I was also looking at the weather, and it was a few weeks out, and it was doing all sorts of things, like it was blistering heat and then rain and whatever, so I was having to prepare for everything. So yeah, the weather was bothering me, so I probably went a bit overboard in terms of what I bought. I bought a photographer's umbrella, I bought some tripod weights, which you could put on my portable easel. So yeah, I ended up with quite a lot of kit. I was looking at what paints to take, so thinking about the fact that you're going to be there for 4 hours, but also thinking that not everything dries quickly depending on what the weather is. I was trying to think about what paints I would use that would be the quickest, and my golden paints definitely came out as the ones that I would take. But then I also wanted to take some inks as well, because just to get a little bit more atmosphere. They give you a very distinct size for the canvas. I will put it up what it is. You can take more than one, then you can take more than one canvas, you can take paper, you can take any surface, but it has to be within this size. And you're allowed to prep it. I think you can put some gesso on it, and you could put a ground, but you can't put anything else on it at all. And I knew I was going to have to work out what to do when I got there, because I tend to use a lot of materials, and yeah, I ended up taking quite a lot. But I felt very organised, and I think that's the big thing, is to get organised, think about what you absolutely need. It's like the bare minimum that you couldn't live without, and also think about whether it's going to dry quickly and whether that's a problem. For me, it's a problem because I like to work in layers, so I wanted something that was going to dry quickly. And I think this is just as helpful to 2024 wildcards. Obviously, we don't know what the weather's going to be like in May and June this year, but I would just sort of prep for what kind of weather you think it's going to be. When we got to there the night before, found out that on the day where we were going to have to be was like, I thought I'd be able to walk through the grounds with my sack trolley, with my camping trolley. But no, they were very, very clear that I probably wouldn't be able to do that, just because of the distance it was. It looked like 15 minutes to me, but apparently, as it turned out, it was through miles and miles of countryside, which is all part of the grounds, which would have been a bit problematic. So we got there on the Tuesday for the Wednesday heat, but there had already been a heat on the Tuesday. So when we got there, we were in the car park, and we were just going out to dinner at a pub up the road, and we actually saw the judges, which was very exciting, and some of the crew as well. So we got to see them in person beforehand. So then we went off to dinner at a lovely pub up the road, which was really nice food. Actually, some of the crew ended up coming to, which was weird, we felt like we were stalking. But we could see that the pods were being set up, moved from bin to being set up somewhere else, which was interesting, and I'll come back to that. So we came back from dinner, and the great thing about staying in Hever Castle on grounds is you get to explore the grounds after hours, which means when all the tourists have gone home, which was just the most immense privilege, because it meant you got to see everything, like sort of as the Boleyn family would have enjoyed it, as William Astor, Waldorf Astor would have enjoyed it, without all the public there. So I'm just going to show you some photos now of what that was like. It was absolutely magical seeing it all without other people there, and it was a really lovely summer's evening, so I was really, really grateful for that happening, and it was really cool. As it turned out, the weather on the Tuesday had been torrential. Some of you will have already seen the first episode they did of Hever Castle, and they didn't really go into a lot of detail, but it did rain a lot, and it was stormy and really, really wet. Yeah, I was really worried that was going to then happen on Wednesday, but by the time we got there, it was absolutely brilliant sunshine. So we're just walking around in shirt sleeves. It was super warm. And then, as it turns out, it was really warm overnight. So warm that I couldn't sleep. I mean, maybe I was a little bit nervous about the whole thing, but I really, really couldn't sleep. And it was so hot in our room, and we had to have the windows open, and there was a lot of bugs coming in, so it was just all a bit crazy. And so yeah, a bit of a crazy night. I had to get up super early, obviously. The hotel very kindly put on an early breakfast for all those who had to take part. Yeah, so that's something you probably need to think about if you stay over, is are they going to give you breakfast? Because you're going to need it, because it's a very long day. So yeah, that was really cool. It was a really nice breakfast. I saw some of the, well, as it turned out, were other wild cards at the breakfast. He was sort of saying, "Are you doing it? Are you doing it?" Yeah. But no one really wanted to talk to each other because everyone's a bit nervous. As I said, I wanted to walk with my trolley through the grounds to the meeting spot, which was actually a car park on the other side of the grounds. But the staff said no, it wasn't a good idea. So we had to drive from where we'd parked to another car park in the other grounds, which was fine. Thank God I had Mark with me to be able to do that, because I would have been a bit stuck otherwise. Anyway, you could see when you got there was a line forming, and they were wanting you to sort of turn over the car, as in go and get your stuff out and get out quickly. That wasn't where you permanently parked. This was this drop-off point, and then Mark went and parked our car back at the accommodation. So I was left there, got in the queue, was a bit nervous. When I had my red overalls on, not these ones. I bought some others. Wait for it. I was going to wear my red overalls, and as it turned out to be really hot, I knew I couldn't wear these ones because they're very thick. But I found some others from Port West, which are, I think, the same make, but this is a much, much thinner material. So it was a bit more appropriate to the ridiculous 25-degree heat that it turned out to be on that June day. Literally just had a vest on underneath and some shorts. Yeah, so it was getting hot already by that point. So I get in the queue, and I thought, well, better start making friends here. And I started talking to a chap next to me, Clive, and, so talk about where you're from, what you do, all this sort of thing. And it turned out he was from Northwood, which is where I'd just come from. And as a bizarre twist of fate, he actually knew a neighbour. He was friends with a neighbour of mine. So what are the chances of a small world? So we ended up spending most of the day together, really. And we were sort of thick as thieves the rest of the day. So he's an oil painter, and he was worried he wouldn't get things done in time. I was worried I'd have too much time because I paint quite fast. So we get in queue, and then they sign you all in. We had our canvases signed, and what that amounted to, because I'd seen in previous years that they had a stamp with Landscape Artist of the Year on it, which is this logo, which I will talk about this t-shirt later. But I'd seen that they'd had a stamp on the back of the canvas, and I was so excited about getting the stamp. But all it amounted to was someone just putting a little tick on the canvas. But hey ho, that's what it means. I will know from now on. So then anyway, get your tick. They ticked that one. I also did, they had a big piece of paper they ticked as well. And then we had a canvas to sign. And then we sort of told to sort of go and wait just past where they were signing people in. I was already getting quite annoyed with my big trolley by this point, because it was so hot and heavy, and it wasn't even 9 o'clock. So we had this then very long, slow walk to where we were going to be painting. Now, bearing in mind the night before, when we'd been wandering around the grounds, we'd seen them putting up the pods, and they were putting up the pods fairly near the castle. The previous day, apparently, they'd been painting by the lake, which obviously you've seen if you've been watching the series. So we knew that they hadn't done the castle the day before. And so we're having this very, very long walk, and I'm thinking, have they just made us drive like 15 minutes to end up to walk backwards with this all this stuff back to somewhere 2 minutes from where we've been staying overnight? But it's all part of the smoke and mirrors of the programme. So that's what happens. We end up walking for ages, about 15 minutes, through the grounds, up and down some hills. I've got this trolley, it's very hot. I'm trying to stop the trolley from like falling down on my legs. And eventually we get to the spot, and then they're going to make us do the shot where all the wildcards walk into shots, which you've probably seen a few times. And they made us do it again. And again, and again, and again. So each time I had to drive the trolley back up the hill and down again. And so I was fairly far back, so I doubt you see me in the programme. At this point, I haven't actually seen the final show. I'll maybe do an addendum if that's the case. But I doubt you'll see me. I mean, you might see a little bit of red poking out, but I was quite far back in the queue. So we were pulling the trolley back and forth so many times while I was. Anyway, then we get to the sort of the main bit of the venue. So we're in front of the castle. There's a massive expanse of grass in front of us. There's a little bit of a moat lake thing, and the castle's right in front of us. And then off to the left we can see the pods, and they're already kind of setting up, and they've also got a great view of the castle. Clive and I had a little bit of a conflab about where we were going to go, and he'd identified the night before, because he was also staying in the B&B. We wanted to be right in front of this stream, so he already had a plan. So I thought, fine, I'll just go along with him. That's great. And then they literally got us into a line, and it was like a ready, steady, go moment, like Christmas sales or something at IKEA. It was just ridiculous. So we were like ready to run to the spot. And it was ridiculous. So it's like some contestants in some show. It just all adds to the drama. But I guess it makes for good telly. So whether they even show that, I don't know. Anyway, we got a good spot, got right down to the front, which was fantastic. We had quite a bit of space initially, and then until everybody was like crowding around us. And I think that they were trying to sort of contain the area that wildcards are in. So they were asking people to like move forward. So fortunately, because I had my trolley, I was able to sort of map out my space quite a lot. And it acted as a really good table as well. So I had plenty of space in. It was fine. So the camera started filming us setting up, and like almost immediately I had a camera right in my face. I'm sure they used a lovely close-up of my forehead doing that, like doing that as I'm doing my easel. Yeah, so once that was on my face for about 15 minutes. They were all lovely, by the way. They were really friendly throughout the day. They were like asking questions, and not just because they were doing their jobs in terms of finding out what's filmed, but a lot of them seemed genuinely interested in art processes and things like that. And I've worked on TV and film sets before in my day job, and that not always the case. Like, I mean, crew members generally okay, but like you always get the odd sort of like person, but none of them were like that at all. They were all really, really friendly, and all the production assistants like coming around, sort of scouting, asking questions, because they're trying to scout for like interesting stories that they can get the judges to come and interact with. So by about 9, most people were sort of set up and ready, and they kind of told you to sort of get going with your painting. They told us to not do anything until that we were told, so you just can get set up. But it was so hot by this point. I mean, we were all absolutely melting. So now I'm not a traditional landscape artist, but I mainly do abstract landscapes like the one I showed you, it's behind me. But I had a vague idea about what I wanted to convey. I just really wanted to get across the history and the wealth and the opulence and all the stories of Hever Castle. Now, I did a few sketches ahead of time on my iPad actually in Procreate, which I'm just swiping through now. Which I think you'll see sort of like the flow, which is very similar to some of the abstract landscapes. It's just getting the flow and the lines and sort of a bit of movement and energy into it. I mean, my normal technique is to build up layers and let them dry and then build up more. And I had a plan to do that because I thought, well, the golden paint's going to dry quite quickly, so I'll be able to do that over the day. But there's a few things I think when you do these things, you find, because you can plan stuff out when you're in your studio, because you're on your own and it's all your own environment, it's controllable. When you're on this sort of thing, it's not controllable at all. And what I didn't plan for was the 25-degree heat, which unfortunately, as soon as I put the paint onto the palette, it just dried. It was just drying, like completely drying on the top within minutes of it hitting the palette. So it just became kind of unworkable to a point. And because golden stuff, it dried extra quick. So the pressure was on sort of trying, and in the end I ended up just putting the paint straight on the canvas, which I have done before, but it wasn't my plan for this painting. Also, some other things, the pressure of needing to create something realistic for the show was really strong. Now, I normally don't have that at all because I'm in my studio and I'm in my flow, and it's never been an issue. But because I was surrounded by so many people that were not only trying to paint exactly what was in front of them, so many amazing painters who are upper craftspeople at creating something atmospheric and beautiful, and like the lines and the technicality and the detail. It's just not the way I paint. So the pressure with all that going on really sort of steered me in a particular direction. I was starting off quite loose, and then I kind of got a bit tight because of all that, which was a bit of a lesson to learn. The stress, the adrenaline and the pressure, I would just say it also had a big impact. I'm not someone who I like a bit of the adrenaline. I've worked in live broadcasting before, so I'm not someone who like completely flips out at it. But I think with so many people around and this sort of sense of doing something to time and whatever, even though I had loads of time, and the heat, I'm just going to keep talking about the heat. It was hot. It was really, really hot. Something I'm not used to is having so many people around me talking while I'm painting. I think when I've done live painting projects, when I was at Roy's Art Fair, I did a big live painting piece, but people were sort of coming in and like looking at it and moving on, or if they're standing, they were being quite respectful. I was also talking to camera at that point, so people weren't interrupting because I was doing all the talking. What I wasn't used to was all the constant conversations and commentary going on around me. And I think I also wanted to listen to what was going on, because you want to be really like into it, but you also want to be into your painting, so it was difficult to get the balance right. I think a lesson for now is to very much get into your zone in some way, trying to find some way to get into your zone when you're painting. I didn't get picked for interview, but all the judges came past and said hello to me and the people around me, and they were constantly coming in between all the artists. It's difficult because where we were all like quite packed in, but they definitely made an effort to come and look at everything. I definitely feel that. And they were all really friendly. I mean, like Stephen Mangan and Ty and Kathleen and Kate, they all came they said hello or whatever as they were coming past. So yeah, really, really great, really sort of nice atmosphere overall with the sort of crew and the judges and all the other contestants. I had researched before that a lot of wildcards have also done it before, so there were several people there who I overheard that had been a wildcard in previous series, and they're now on series, will be series 10 next, I think. It will be the next one they record this year. So there's a lot of people, and I think a lot of people reapply just to be a wildcard. And I think if the locations are good, I mean, because I will apply again to Landscape Artist of the Year, but so I can do the wildcards more than anything, and it just depends on the locations. But if they're good, I'll definitely do it again. There are also a few art groups there who like all knew each other for the same area, so they obviously applied together and all got in, which was really interesting. I think also there was a lot of art groups that weren't part of the Wildcards, which were sitting behind us, but sort of painting along at the same time. So I think that's something to consider if you want to go and see the show being recorded or be part of it. You could just go to the venue or the location and just paint along. That's certainly seems to be encouraged, but you wouldn't necessarily be part of the programme, but you'd at least see it going on. What I liked about Hever Castle specifically was the fact that most people were quite respectful, but there were a lot of people coming in and sort of having a look, particularly when we were kind of going on filming breaks, as it were. I mean, still people were doing their paintings, but the crew were having a break, so a lot of people who were just watching would come in and sort of pass comment. I got a few nice comments, which is always encouraging. Also got a lot of people kind of looking at it going they didn't get it at all, but that's fine. It's sort of part of the fun. I'm quite used to that. Not everyone expects sort of abstract artists to be at these things anyway, so that's fine. As I said, there were a lot of art groups there and art lovers not part of the Wildcards, and they just come along to the heats. I think Mark overheard there was a group who go to every single heat of every single series. Wow, travelling up and down the country, so that's quite a commitment. And some of the groups were just there all the time. I thought it was quite clever actually. So it's a way to be part of the show, not have a 6 a.m. start. And I can't see that being feasible at all locations though, because some of them are quite remote, but it made a lot of sense for something like the Hever Castle because it's open to the public anyway. So we paint for 4 hours. It's actually a little bit longer than 4 hours because they have breaks and they're not filming all the time. So it's all a bit, it's like 6 hours you're standing there really from the point which they say paint. And then eventually they come around and announce the winner. It went to a very talented painter. I'm not going to name them in this, but I will put their name below once the show's been aired. What did I paint? You're like dying to hear, I'm sure. So, here is my painting of Hever Castle. Taken from, we were just this side of the lake. There was loads of reeds here. This is the water. There was loads of lilies there with the sunlight catching them. And then we had, beyond that, there was sort of grassy bit. And then there was all this topiary, which you probably can't see, which I've tried to capture in all these places. And then the crowds, lots of people there. Lots of beautiful foliage in the background. And then the castle itself. And the sky was sort of, it was sunny to begin with, but then clouds sort of came in. So I was trying to capture the movement of that. But also, as I said with the sketches, I was trying to capture sort of the magic and mystery of the castle. And I really felt like that's what I was trying to do with the sky, and I think probably the sky is the most successful bit about the painting. I got very frustrated with all the lines of the castle. It ended up being a bit kind of weirdly medieval looking in this sort of perspective and everything. But on reflection, I quite like that. There was also this flag which was causing me problems. I really liked doing the people. I think that was really sort of loved doing this sort of like little spots of colour, rather than just sort of defining them. The topiary were quite hard. But yeah, I think, look, on reflection, I haven't really, bearing in mind I did this last June and I've only recently looked at it just to get it out to do this video. I don't think it's actually too bad. I rather sort of like it. But yeah, that was my painting. I used a lot of gold actually in the castle. It's sort of a beigey colour anyway. But my idea was sort of using lots of gold to sort of just represent the opulence of it all. And yeah, lots of different types of green that we used there. And I also used some gold in the water here, just to represent the sun sort of reflecting in the light. But yeah, I mean, also what's really nice is I've been able to see some of my painting in some other people's pictures on Instagram, which was really exciting. I'm going to leave that there. So, but the funniest thing was that there was a woman painting directly behind me. So I was right at the front, so I was quite in view of a lot of the other artists. And I think you'll see me, if you don't see me, you'll see my red overalls because I'm right at the front, in front of the lake. But somebody actually behind me, one of the artists behind me, she actually painted the back of my head, and I was wearing a white, I had my hair up and I had a white fedora, a hat on, and so she painted me into a painting. So I'm there, so that's really exciting, and I hope they show that. It'd be really cool, because her painting was really good, and also Clive was in it as well, because he was standing next to me. So yeah, that's what I did. As I said, it mostly that was golden. I think I did take some Dana Rowney fluids as well, which in the end I had to use a lot more because they just sort of didn't dry as quickly, and that meant I could work with them a little bit more. But those are what I used. So yeah, it's just what was it? I think it was just a Cassart canvas actually, but just a regular canvas, and I did gesso it, and I had a very light ground on it. I didn't actually get a chance to see what was going on with the pods at all day. We were so focused on our space. It was all finished. You're so tired that you just want to go and have a lie down or a pint or something. And so, but it was exhausting, I'm not gonna lie. It was a very long day, and I do think if you're thinking about doing it, something you might want to consider. Sunburn, yes, definitely happened. I had like factor 30, possibly 50 on my face all day, and a hat on. I didn't do too badly, but I did get a bit of sunburn. Some other people were quite badly sunburned, so do make sure you are prepped for all weathers when you go. Food, and I had loads of snacks, so I was fine with food. I had lots of things I could nibble on, and fortunately I had a husband to bring me a sandwich, which was really nice. But I think a lot of people didn't have, and they had to leave and go and get food for themselves. So unfortunately with Hever Castle there was lots of places to get food, so that wasn't a problem, and also go to the toilet. I did unfortunately lose my glasses that I had on set somewhere, probably in the loos because of all the going back and forth, but hey ho. At the end, I think, which was a really exciting thing, and I hope they do this year, they gave us the chance to buy a t-shirt. So this was my t-shirt. It says Landscape Artist of the Year on the front, and on the back it says Wildcard, which is very exciting. And so I'm very proud of that, and at least it's a nice memento, because I think they probably felt like people don't get something to remember it by, so it's a really nice thing to have. So yeah, after that, packing up, and yeah, just that was the end of it. It's been a long time coming to be able to share this all with you, but I'm really excited to finally do that. If you've got any questions, please just do leave them in the comments below, and particularly if you're thinking of applying this year. I've tried to be as comprehensive as possible, but I may well have left things out. I will probably add some stuff on captions, so hopefully that's covered everything. And do let me know if there's anything you want to know. Hopefully if you've received this, you may already have signed up for my newsletter at jroates.com. If you haven't and you're seeing this a bit later, because this was an exclusive video I did for my subscribers. So if you're watching this and you'd like to see more videos like this from me and more sort of stuff in the studio, which I'll be sharing this year, then go to jroates.com and sign up. There's a link below. Also subscribe to my channel, because I've been doing a lot more YouTube videos this year. I'm really trying to build up my YouTube subscribers. And also if you want to go on Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at jroatesart. I hope you're having a fantastic day, whatever you're doing. Really thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.